Everybody, and welcome back to Ape Nation, your number one source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today I am giving my review of episode 13 of the short-lived 1974 Planet of the Apes TV series. If you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things Apes. As you all know by now, this is a series of reviews following every episode of the show that was ever released, all leading up to a full series review to coincide with the 50-year anniversary. If you have not seen my reviews of the previous episodes, you can check all of them out right here. And for those who are interested in following along with all of my reviews and watching the episodes week by week with me, or if you're just interested in watching the show by yourself, I've put a link down in the description where you can watch the show for yourself totally free. And as always, for those who have not seen the show and do not want to be spoiled just yet, I'm going to start at the beginning with just my general thoughts on the episode before going a little bit further into it and giving all of my more detailed thoughts. So if you're interested in knowing my thoughts but don't want to be spoiled just yet, you can watch the beginning of this video, click away, go check out the episode for yourself, and then come back here to hear the rest of what I have to say about it. So with all of that said, let's get into Planet of the Apes, episode 13, The Liberators. When Virdon and Burke are captured by a human community that has made a deal with the gorillas to provide them with human slaves, they, along with help from Galen, must find a way to survive and avoid becoming slaves for the apes. So as for my just general thoughts on this episode, and I'm gonna get right to it, this is probably my least, if not one of my least favorite episodes of the entire show. I think this is easily one of the weakest episodes up to this point in the series. I think it has a few impressive and enjoyable moments here and there. Some stuff with Galen I really liked, and there's a couple of moments that I thought were interesting, and there's some world building and political commentary stuff that I think is introduced and could have been interesting if done better. And also I really liked John Ireland. His performance in this episode I thought was really good as the character of Brun. That being said, I think there's way too much focus on these newly introduced human characters that are in this episode, and I never at any point ever grew to like or care about any of them. And I thought that the execution of the story, for the most part, fell really flat. I think the story itself on paper has potential, could have been good, but the direction, the pacing of it, the way it plays out is just, for the most part, boring. The episode as a whole, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not one that I would ever want to watch again. And overall, it just left me unengaged, uninterested, and like I said, for the most part, really bored. So with all of that said, I'm now going to get a little bit further into the episode and give my full, more detailed thoughts. As for, again, some of the stuff that I liked here, I think Galen is great in this episode. He gets a lot of time to shine. It's pretty much his episode, or at least he's kind of presented as the lead of this episode. Virdon and Burke don't get a whole lot to do, obviously because they're captured and spend a lot of it imprisoned, but they're still, of course, always likable, and they get some fun moments here and there. But really, it's Roddy McDowall as Galen who gets the most fun stuff to do and is the most entertaining, is the most memorable part of this entire episode. I also think that there's a specifically very shockingly intense moment in the beginning of the episode. I think the sacrifice / ritual, whatever you want to call it, of the character at the beginning of the episode who gets killed, I really was pretty impressed with how that was all put together. together. I think the tone of it was really dark, and it felt like it was gonna be going even more dark at a certain point. Of course it doesn't, but I just was very impressed with all that stuff at the beginning. And also, like I said up top, I think John Ireland as the character of Brun, the god figure in this episode, his performance is really strong, and for the most part I think elevates what is otherwise a pretty uninteresting and forgettable character, but the performance itself is still very good. When it comes to the whole ape-human agreement that is established here, that is what causes Virdon and Burke to be captured. The whole history of how it happened with the apes raided the village for human slaves, and apes and humans both dying, and the agreement forming so that humans would provide slaves for the apes by going out and capturing the humans by themselves. I thought it presented a really great and really interesting opportunity to delve into some political commentary and to follow it up with some world building, but unfortunately that stuff is just never really explored beyond being a plot device. It's still really cool, I just wish it had been used in a more interesting and more depth-filled way. And the one other thing I enjoyed in this episode was the ending confrontation scene between Brun and Virdon and Burke and Galen. I thought that whole sequence was pretty well done. It's really well directed and it's pretty intense. It doesn't really have much of a payoff because up to that point I just wasn't that engaged in what was going on, but just as a scene itself, it's really well done. Unfortunately, that is about it as far as what I liked about this episode, because I didn't really like anything else. And it really starts and almost ends with the characters of Miro and Talia, because I found these two characters, who are given a lot of screen time in this episode and are for the most part a major focus of the story, so unbearably annoying and unlikable as characters. Also, the acting from both of them, I gotta say, especially from the actress who plays Talia, no shade to her, maybe she was a great actress, but both of them I just found to be honestly shockingly bad in this episode. And of course, this is a 1970s TV show. I'm not expecting top tier Academy Award level acting, but for the most part, the acting in this show has been fairly consistent with a couple really strong highlights. This is the first time I've ever seen one of these episodes where I was actually distracted by how bad the acting was, and maybe it was a choice by the director, I don't know, but for both of these characters, I just never got into them. I found them annoying, and also the drama that was constantly happening between them, I just found so uninteresting and so dull, and it just felt like an out-of-place soap opera at times throughout this entire story. And speaking of the story, it is good on paper. I think there's a great idea here, there's a great concept at play, but it just felt flat, and it failed to grab me as much as it should have. From the beginning of this episode all the way into the end, I think the direction and the pacing of it just doesn't work. It just felt like a much longer episode than it actually was. It just dragged a lot of times, and it failed to really grab me on any sort of emotional or engaging or interesting level. So for me, the story is something that I think could have been executed better, and the characters that they're choosing to give you so much focus on never give you the opportunity to be engaged in that story. And I think if I'd at least cared about these characters and it made me a little more interested in them, maybe it would have been okay with some of the other elements of the story not being as well refined, but because I never cared about them or the story, it really just sank the whole thing for me. I will say I think the mask design of the gods at the end, that ultimately is just a gas mask, was actually a really cool design. It just wasn't as effective as it probably could have been just because of the way it was lit in completely flat old school TV lighting. That's not really the fault of the show, you know, with budgets and also just the way that that specific mask is used in the story. But for me, I think the design of it was cool. I just think it could have looked a bit cooler if they'd found a more creative way to show it. And overall, I just think this is a contender for the worst episode of the show for me. It has just enough things going for it to maybe elevate it above a couple others, but I just wasn't feeling it. It was just completely lacking in anything that's made me really enjoy this show so far, outside of, again, some small moments with Galen and with Virdon and Burke and just getting some scenes with the three of them together, and those are always great, but it just failed to grip me, and ultimately I was left very disappointed and very, like I said, bored. But maybe I am in the minority on this one. Maybe you all really like this episode. I want to know what you all have to say about it down in the comments below. Am I wrong on this one? Maybe did you guys like the acting of the two who played Miro and Talia? Did you like those characters more than I did? Were you actually into this story unlike me? Did you think it was well executed? I want to know what all of you guys have to say down in the comments below. I will be back next week with the 14th and final episode of this series, episode 14, and following that I will of course be putting out my full series review of the entire show, as well as an additional video ranking all 14 episodes of the show after that. But until then, thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll see you in the next one, so until then, goodbye.